started in our sharing of thoughts and ideas, one of the first things that came up was that as a design team, we need to focus on, number one, our school population, the demographics of our school. And connected with this, there was also conversation around, and this might be a repeat, also conversation around what's our purpose, what's our function. And what was discussed, well, no, it wasn't discussed. We never really got into this. What I said earlier, though, is that possibly our purpose is learning, student learning, and learning to high levels. So, given our student population, giving learning as our purpose, one of the things that we discussed was the conversation or the exchange of thoughts between, do we want to be a school, a destination school, or do we want to be a school that, say, isn't about IB or about maybe doctor, nurse, or business, or medical assistants, or AVID, but that we're about serving our kids, just in general. Not in general, but specifically. The kids that live across the street, 2 blocks away, down on Trussell. Focusing on student, before I go there, I did this. We also, I snuck this in for conversation's sake, because primarily my role was just to capture what was being said, but interspersed are my thoughts. But it was mostly the group talking and then me trying to capture it and put it up here on the board.
I know. I mean, you were really, it was a great facilitation.
This thought, task predicts performance, led to conversation around personalization, where we're actually personalizing, where we're getting to know each and every student, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're passionate about, understanding their culture, understanding who they are, what makes them beat inside, and then developing opportunities that are relevant, real world, and yet also rigorous. We talked about project-based, being project-based. We talked about, very briefly, an ethic of excellence. This is a lesson design model that I briefly touched on.
What did the acronym stand for? Go ahead.
This stands for Access, Interpret, Produce, and Disseminate. So in the lesson, the piece that's access is building background knowledge, connecting to prior knowledge. Interpret, then, is where you're taking a piece of new information and making sense out of it for yourself, and working collaboratively with others to just talk shapes ideas, and the notion that learning is social. And that from there, then, you're producing something concrete. It might be a presentation. It could be an artifact. It could be some writing. It could be a drawing. It could be a presentation, a PowerPoint. But then one of the things that we discussed briefly was the importance of dissemination. Because what we talked about somewhere in here, and it's not up here, is the power of relationships. That was something I thought about that was said over and over, but it's not up here, relationships. Because what's been discovered is that students who, say, like Janet, will work their bananas off for Janet. And not necessarily because it's something intrinsic. I mean, she may create that passion in them, but because of the connection with her. That same kid might hate Dan's guts, and when he rolls or she rolls into class, even though I'm very capable, I can do it, I value it, but because of our relationship, I blow it up. The next piece of disseminate is that right now, the way most of our classes are set up, is that the person that they produce and then disseminate to is the teacher. So if, for instance, I'm really passionate about, and I'm really given an authentic choice on what it is I'm going to be producing, which leads to authentic engagement, that, for instance, if I'm really excited about structures, building, and the texture of buildings and the shapes of buildings, if I know that there's an architect somewhere that that might be my mentor, and I have an opportunity to share with the architect my rendering of this building that I've imagined, the likelihood of my motivation going up is radically increased, which got to then some of the other things that we discussed later, or that you'll hear later in the tape, about internships and mentors, about getting an opportunity to take whatever you've produced and share it with somebody that's important to you, that's significant to you. It could be your grandparents, it could be your aunt, it could be a neighbor, it could be your Boy Scout, Girl Scout leader. I mean, it could be a lot of things. Okay, so I don't know, did I talk at all about this? Okay, this is a really important equation, and what the equation stands for, it gets to a value, it gets to motivation and possibly engagement. Value isn't, the value is the value that the student puts on whatever the incentive is, whatever the reward is, like grades, graduation, things that are common in a traditional high school. And in my short time here, students have taught me, large numbers of students have taught me that grades and graduation aren't valued. And so it's really critical that this is a multiplication equation, because if the value here is 0, I don't value those things, and especially if I don't have a relationship, that's a whole different piece. That's the piece that maybe is missing from this equation. This becomes a 0 times whatever this value is, my motivation is going to be 0. Expectancy is what I perceive my success rate, what my success will be on what you're asking me to do. So if you're asking me to produce a pinch bowl in an art class, or, yeah, I'll stop with a pinch bowl, and I don't see that there's any way in HEWQ that I can do that, it's a 0, but I really want to get a good grade in the class, because I want to graduate, but I got to get this elective out of the way. If that is a 0, my motivation is going to be almost nil. That's what this theory suggests. Okay, then we talked a little bit about time. We talked about what a daily schedule might look like. We didn't go into specificity. We just said that's something that we need to talk about and explore. Number of periods, length of periods. We talked about the day, and that possibly there's a need for shifts. I don't know if shifts is the right word, but like a morning shift and an afternoon shift for kids that have different needs. If we're going to focus on, that's going to be important. So are we a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. kind of a situation, or in 7 to 7, or 8 to 8, or 9 to 9? And then also looked at the year, and then I snuck in my bias of a single track year-round school, so that we blow up the summer loss with kids, especially kids in poverty that don't have the advantages of going to camp and other things. Huge. What this is getting at as well. Huge. Not just the academic loss, but the language loss for the high percentage of kids that we have that are young. We talked about an article that Myrna had sent out in the morning, and it wasn't Smart School, it was Smart Educational System. And the analogy was made that smart educational systems are like smart technology, and the organizations, or I'll say organizations that produce smart technology, they're constantly adaptive, that they're reinventing themselves, that the next iteration, the next 5 iterations of what the next chip is going to look like with Intel, Pentium, they've already started what Pentium 15 is going to look like. So that we need to be a smart school, that we can't get caught in a rut. 4 essential questions: what do we want kids to be able to do? How do we know if they can? What do we do when they can't? What do we do when they already can? And it gets to other key issues of common assessments and the whole issue of grades. What is a grade? And I think the rest of this was already spoken of. Yep. All right. Entrepreneurs, business, medical assistants, and others. If you're not in a program, and I know John talks a lot about these kids, that they might be the lost ones among us. You won't see a lot of these kids right now graduate from high school, at least as it stands right now. In SPED, the mention was made of a learning center, ELD, a newcomer program that would be specifically designed for kids that are fresh immigrants to the United States, and many of them have never been to school or have only been to school for a very short period of time. Then we also talked about a desired state, and there was quite a bit of conversation around, do we want to be a destination school? And our understanding, I think, that we came to of a destination school would be like an IB school, or the New San Juan with the emphasis on career technical education. And at least at this time, the group, looking for more input, is that isn't what we think we ought to be focusing on. We should be focusing on the kids that we serve. Not trying to get kids attracted to the school, but the kids that walk in here every day that live across the street or 2 streets down or down close to house. And that also a lot of discussion around focusing on our expectations, focusing on equity. Equity meaning that what a graduate looks like, because there's some consideration about what are the expectations of an Abbott student, a Dr. Hirsch student, a business student, a medical tech, and the others. Do we have the same expectations for them, and they graduate with the same set of skills, and does their diploma mean the same thing? And making sure that kids have equal access or equitable access to programs and such, and opportunity. Each one of these little boxes could be any one of these, but once you have a current reality and a desired state, and this was a thought that was given, some thought was given, and this was some pushback on this. All kids meet or exceed UC entrance requirements, and a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal, and this would be down the road. This wouldn't be something that, that would be down there, that you would maybe get at the expectation equity access piece if we were able to actualize that. Each of these little rectangles represents an action step, something that's going to, something that we believe is going to pull our current reality closer to whatever our desired state is.